Welcome to Shop Safety video number 2. This is John Waddick again from the Engineering Science Department, and I'll be joined today with Don Howard, who's a master tool maker. In this video, we're going to focus on just two things. Number one, the safe operation of a machine, and number two, safe cleanup procedures. Now, it may seem like how can you hurt yourself cleaning up, but you'd be surprised how easily someone could get injured. So I'll cover both of these things in today's video. So let's start out with machine operations. All right, Don is going to just load up the machine. Notice that he's using a paper towel so that his hands don't come in direct contact with the sharp surfaces. And we just want to talk about some things once a machine is on and running. So we're not going to turn the machine on here, but let's assume Don is in there working on there. One of the things is, as your partner, you do not want to come up and distract somebody from behind. You don't want to tap somebody on the shoulder. You don't want to come up from behind and startle them. So what you should do if you need to talk to someone who's operating a machine is come into their field of vision, all right, so that they can see you, and then you may talk to them. Obviously, you're only going to want to run one machine at a time. You can turn around now, Don. How about if you're running a machine, Don, and some of these things are computer controlled, and it looks like it's doing its thing. Could I then say, hey, it's going to be another 2 minutes, maybe I take a bathroom break?
No. You never want to leave your machine unattended. That's when things can happen.
All right. And if you're not sure, remember, that's where that e-stop comes into play. If something on a computer-controlled thing starts going awry, you hit that.
Hit the e-stop, and it stops everything.
So you should have your hand ready at that if you're unsure. Okay. All right, Don, sometimes the machining process may take a while. Students might want to sit on a stool. What's your feeling about that?
You never want to get that comfortable with a machine. Here again, it's like walking away from your machine. If you're not prepared for the inevitable, then you know that's when it's going to happen. So if you're sitting down all relaxed, you can't react in time. You see where the e-stop is on this? Yep. There's no way if I'm sitting down here that I can react. Or if my tool's starting to load up where I need to get the chips away, I can't see what's going on. I can't pay attention to what's going on. Yeah.
Okay, so no sitting down on the job here. You need to be at the ready to get to the controls. Now, Don, when this spindle is moving, no hand should be in there for any reason, right? Now, some of the things what are two common things that students would put their hands in there and do?
They want to feel their part. They want to see what their part finish feels like. So they'll come up and they'll want to touch their part and feel their part while the tool's cutting. Absolutely not. You never know when you can slip and your finger can go in there. The other thing they're going to want to do is measure their part. So even though the machine isn't moving, but the spindle's still running, they're going to want to get in there and make their part. It only takes a second. Turn this off, hit the brake, check your part. You do not want to ever get your hands near your spinning end mill. All right? Imagine this thing is having a work envelope saying, all right, I can't put my hands anywhere within this envelope as long as that spindle's running.
All right. I have seen students who would want to measure their parts. Now, when Don talks about turning off, he means this tool is not spinning. That's what he means by the spindle being off. Now, Don, sometimes when you're machining a part, chips and debris start to accumulate around where you're machining. How would you address that? Just, you don't want to use your hand.
No, we use a chip brush, all right? A lot of times you can just brush your chips away of your part, and it'll clear it. You'll be able to see, and then you can have oil on here, which also helps lubricate your chips so you're not getting an abundance amount of oil over your parts. All right. The other thing I've seen students use is air hose. You might see it in industry where they'll blow air hoses. The problem with using air is now it shoots chips all over the shop, and if you have someone walking by, it can be a hazard. All right. So you really have to pay attention to how you remove your chips.
You have to have extreme respect for this machine when that spindle is moving. It's ready to cut metal and can certainly do bodily harm to you as well. So you should think of a cylinder around there, probably a foot diameter, and that you're going to keep your hands out of. The only thing that could go in near is the chip brush, The chip brush, okay. All right, Don, this machine doesn't have any guards, but some machines may have certain guards in place. Those have to be installed and used, so you don't take those away. Let me just review for a quick moment some of the important things that Don just mentioned about safely operating machine. And these safety procedures will be reviewed again in the future. But let's start with the first one. You never want to startle an operator from behind. If you have to get someone's attention who's operating a machine, you should step around them, get into their line of sight so they can see you, and then carefully address them. You don't want to startle them. They might move something, ruin their part, or get injured. You only want to run one machine at a time. Now this may seem obvious, but sometimes if one operation is taking longer and it's computer controlled, you may be tempted to go over to the sander or something. No, one machine at a time. Your eyes have to be focused. Your attention has to be fully on one machine and one machine only. You're going to never leave a running machine. Once again, this gets back to computer-controlled operation. So let's say your machine is running a computer-controlled operation and it's going to take a while. You still have to be there at the ready because something could go wrong and you might have to hit the emergency stop. Which brings us up to another important thing. Before you begin using a machine, you need to know where the emergency stop is. Should something go wrong, you're going to panic because you may be seeing blood, you may be feeling a lot of pain, and you can't even think at that point. So you just need to know instinctively where that E stop is. E stands for emergency. No sitting down at a machine. As Don mentioned, if you're sitting down, you're not in the ready position to hit an E-stop or to take other actions necessary to keep the machine operating safely. When that spindle and sharp tool are spinning, your hands are to stay away from it. Okay? As Don said, there should be a maybe 8 to 12-inch diameter cylinder, imaginary cylinder around a spindle in which you do not put your hands in when it's spinning. He mentioned sometimes students like to put their hand in there after a pass by the cutter to feel the smooth surface of the machining. You're not to do that with a spinning machine. The only thing that should go in that area of danger, that cylinder of danger, I'm going to call it, is a chip brush. And Don talked about sometimes metal chips will accumulate. You need to get them away. You can use a chip brush. He also mentioned that compressed air can be used in that way, but only if it's done under the instruction of your professor and done very carefully because chips could be sent flying in the direction of another student. Whenever you're measuring a part, you need to make sure that the machine is off and the spindle is not turning. You do not want your hands anywhere near a spinning spindle. Once again, all these things come back to say this. A spinning tool can cut metal. It can certainly cut skin, bone, cartilage, muscle, and do terrible damage to you. You don't get a second chance sometimes when you make a mistake with a machine. So do not put your hands anywhere near the spinning tool. All right, so that brings us to the last part, and instructors are going to talk about cleanup. Okay. Now, when I'm done, can I just leave the tool in for the next guy? Maybe he'll use that?
No. You want to take the tool out, especially before you start cleaning. Here again, you're brushing off the vise. You're going to take a paper towel eventually or a rag, and you're going to wipe off this vise. You're going to wipe off the mill. You're going to clean this thing thoroughly so it's ready for either your use next time or the next individual. All right. And if you're wiping around, this is a sharp edge. I wipe my hand under. I stand a chance of cutting my arm, cutting my hand. All right. Yeah. So you remove the tools. Remove all tools.
Remove tools. And I might put it back where you got it.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And you should clean that off. You know, this covered with oil or chips that gets, wiped down with a paper towel. All right. Now, you would brush off the chips with a brush and so forth, clean off the machine down. I see a lot of students who want to blow off their machine with air. What are some precautions we should know about when using air?
Okay. When using air, you got to think about it. A lot of you guys use airsoft or heard of the airsoft rifles, okay? So if I'm blowing chips, right, this vice jaw acts like a barrel. If I'm blowing chips like this, air, to get it all cleaned off, it's sending these things and you get an acceleration of the chip. So now here again, it becomes a problem with an individual walking by or even yourself, you get spray back. So you may end up getting covered with spray back for yourself. So as far as safety goes, you really need to pay attention what you're doing and how you're doing it and how much.
Let's review quickly the safety procedures for cleanup. Number one, Don mentioned that you should remove the cutting tool first. The reason being, if you're going to be wiping down your vise and the area around the machine, those razor sharp surfaces of the cutting tool could still cause severe injury to you if your hand ran over any of those surfaces. So first thing you do, remove the cutting tool, and you should do that using a paper towel so that you're not in direct contact with any of the cutting surfaces. When you're talking about an end mill like what Don used, there's very sharp cutting surfaces both on the bottom of the tool and on the sides. Once you get the tool out, then obviously you can brush off all the chips. They're going to initially go onto the floor. You need to wipe down the machine with paper towels, all the small chips and oil. That machine needs to be spotless and ready for the next student. Now, when there's a lot of chips around or they're down in little crevices, it is very appealing to students to use the compressed air hoses. Now, as Don mentioned, when you put compressed air down into small cavities, it can act as a funnel to accelerate the air to much higher speeds, and thus creating some very dangerous projectiles of very sharp chips. So if using the compressed air, if your lab instructor does allow it, use extreme caution, because you could create very dangerous projectiles that could hit other people or even yourself, or shoot chips into people's faces and potentially even push the chips around their safety glasses into their eyes. The other thing not mentioned in the video, but very important, is you never want to use compressed air to clean off your clothes or your skin. That compressed air, if it got up under your skin because of a cut or something, it could actually lift and de-skin you. That would be a terribly painful thing, and you could also push chips up under your skin. Never point a compressed air hose at anyone or yourself. Never use compressed air as a way to clean yourself off. Finally, when you're all done with cleaning the machine and your partners have cleaned their machine next to you, then you can start sweeping the floor. Remember, usually the cleanup procedure goes from top to bottom, so sweeping the floor should be last. That's an important safety thing because a clean floor means a stable, non-slippery surface for people to be standing on. Now, we're ready to go to the questions. So these questions should be answered on a separate piece of paper and handed in to your lab instructor. So first question, if you need to get the attention of a machine operator, how must you do it? Number two, why must a machine operator never sit? Please give all the reasons for that. 3, describe what Waddick meant by the term cylinder of danger when we talk about the milling machine that Don showed. What is the only item that may enter the cylinder of danger? 4, what is the first thing that must be done prior to cleaning a machine, and why must this be done first? What danger, actually I should say what dangers, because there's multiple dangers from compressed air. So what dangers does compressed air present in a machine shop? Please list more than one there. Thank you for watching the video, and I trust this will help you be safe and healthy while taking Engineering 153.